where we sit on the engineering and everything for that, as well as what you guys have collected in this questions and answers document. So I'm going to kind of kick it off to you guys to kind of give a brief synopsis of where the committee has came and gone to, and then what you guys have collected on information on different sites that could be utilized.
We kind of worked on a little presentation this morning, so go ahead and switch it there. So we're looking to, the electric demand needs are, starting to affect our infrastructure. And when that starts to affect our infrastructure, it starts to, diminish our reliability. We've had some issues with our substation here currently that we've been working on. So, if you want to go ahead. So, single aging substation serving a growing population reaching the outer limits of capability. We also have multiple power sources go through a single waypoint, making redundancy not very redundant. So we have one substation that's meeting, and when it goes down, basically we're relying on generation to keep us afloat. Currently our generation during peak time is not capable to sustain the whole town. So that, I know that's a different discussion. We're not discussing that tonight. So, but we do have, that's part of the engineering study, if you look into that. So, and also with the engineering study on, when you read into that and some of the ideas that they had, Jeff has other ideas that would be more feasible. So when we get into that discussion, he does have a lot of that stuff. So we've been making a lot of repairs to a 22-year-old substation. Substations are meant to last up to 50 years. But with our growth, and Baldwin has grown a lot since I've been here. And with the growth, and it's starting to, we're outgrowing our transformer size. Plus the substation, since it's 22 years old, a lot of the relays and a lot of those components inside that substation are starting to fail, which it happens, but it's, we've been replacing them, and since we only have one substation to work with, we're having to do a lot of those repairs while that's hot, which means that we have to do a lot of testing and while it's hot, and we have to have specialized people to kind of help us do that. And that's been the cause of some of our outages here lately, is a lot of the substation, getting the relays tested and stuff like that. So, okay, I'm gonna have to research my phone because I gotta go to the eye doctor tomorrow to get classes. So how does second substation help? Helps support the growing population and the electric demand. Helps us when we have to lower our outages and to give us more capability for redundancy and all that. So, okay.
Can we go back one minute?
Yes, sir.
As we know, a hot topic here lately has been the frequent outages. Can you explain the third bullet point down there, how more flexibility with power sources results in fewer outages?
As I said before, a lot of the outages we've had lately has been from the substation.
Okay.
So having a second source of the substation, we would be able to, when we do the repairs to the substation we have now, we can push all the load to the new substation while we're doing the work on the old substation.
Okay.
And in doing that, we could get all the testing done and all the dialing in the relays and the settings. We could get it all done while it's dead, and then we don't have to sit there and we work on it this day, and then we have to come back the next day. Well, we have an outage because relay was set wrong and it wasn't dialed in. And that's a lot of our outages that we've had in the last few months is because of that.
Okay.
Some of the wires, when we had them installed, the new relays installed, the contractor actually forgot to install some of the wiring for the reclosures, which caused the main to dump, which caused the town to dump. And, you know, it'd be a lot easier to do, and it's a lot more difficult to do these things when it's hot. So we could isolate that substation, get everything done, it all tested, and then we wouldn't have a lot of these issues we've had in the past couple of months.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and obviously, you're not going to get close to perfection until, I mean, there's never perfection, until we bury all the infrastructure, you know, whenever that day comes where everything's buried. But what percentage of, would you say the problem is this substation?
Well, we'll go to the next slide.
Okay.
Here.
Oh, you're getting out of it.
Well,
I jumped out of
that's
that
on there.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
There you are. You asked and you received.
So, yeah, a lot of our outages, we've had 40% of our outages are due to, in the last year and a half, were due to the substation. Okay, so the 60% was like, you know, storm comes through, tree limb falls out of the sky. I hate to say this word, squirrel hits a line or something, you know, but 40% of the outages that we've had, total, that's tucking out the town, is because of the substation.
Okay.
That 60% also has, you know, Evergy. If they dump us, we have to come in. If we're not going to be up for a while, which we have to rely on Evergy's, their people to tell us when they're going to be back on. If they're not going to be back on a certain amount of time, then we're going to go ahead. Jeff's going to fire up the power plant and get it going. You know, if it's going to take longer than 20 minutes, then because it takes him roughly 30 minutes to get this.
It would take probably 30 to 40 minutes to restore the whole town, from pushing the button go to having the whole town back on, because you have to come on in steps, you know, and you have to bring on multiple units.
Right.
So it is a lengthy process. So if we come in and we have no tie, meaning we have no import, then usually on the way in, we're calling Evergy to find out if they know what the problem is and if they have an ETA. If they don't know what the problem is or have an ETA, then the first thing we do is start firing things.
Right.
But a lot of times when you call them, they have no clue.
Yeah,
Sure.
So a lot of times we'll come back up. He'll be firing up and the engine's running, and all of a sudden, boom, Evergy's back on. So that's just kind of being at the mercy of Evergy. So that's the percentages that we've had. But 40% of them of the last year and a half have been from the substation of our outages, which I think we have everything dialed in. And I don't have a piece of wood to knock on here.
The walls are still made of wood.
But yeah, there we go. But you know, I think we've got everything dialed in. Eaton's been down here helping us get. They're the contractors that installed the relays. We've gotten all the bugs worked out. All our reclosures dialed in. We still have to have. They're still coming in to give everybody a class. I know Jeff and myself. We know how to kind of get through the new relays. And we've taught our guys, but we want to have a more, that was part of the contract, is have a detailed class with everybody that has to deal with those, so they have exactly what to do if there's an issue or how to use that new relay.
Sure.
Which it is a pretty cool piece of equipment. I mean, it took three or four pieces of equipment and combined it into one. So it's just scroll through everything, but it is cool. We also had issues with our battery backup down at the sub, that our battery charger, which was causing us problems. We've got that repaired, and we had a relay out on the switchgear LTC that we've got repaired. We've done a lot of it in-house, but it's still expensive.
Sure.
You know? So we try to pride ourselves on being able to be capable to do a lot of stuff in-house, but there are things that we cannot do.
Right.
We do not have the equipment to do it with. So, you want to go to the next one? So we have the Substation Age. It's nearly 23 years old. Our peak last year was 9.8 megs. and we have a 10 MVA transformer. That's without the fans. Now, if we put the fans on and we run them, we can run a little bit more than that, but not much. The problem is then you start taking life off of the transformer. So, you know, our peak has went up a lot since, you know, when I first started. You know, it was back in 20, 30 years ago, it was in the twos. I mean, now it's up in 9.8. The town has grown. The population, you know, has it grown quite a bit? You know, maybe 1,500 people, but the amount of electricity that's being used has grown a lot. You know, there's a lot more.
So I thought the engineer, when we met with him, said it's capped out 10 megawatts, but we could run it for 50% more than what is the.
We can run it up to 13 to 14.
Okay. That's what.
But that's running it at a higher percentage,
Correct.
and then you start taking life off of that transformer as you do that.
And I get that, but we're also talking about a project that's 4 years out, probably
Right.
from.
Right.
So I want to make sure there's not.
Right,
like-
but also you gotta look at this, if you got 9.8, if you have a 9.8 peak, and that's, you know, usually July or August, and we start going over that 10 MVA, if we have to, he can generate and take some of that load off that transformer. Also, if we add, you know, potentially add more solar in, that will take, we'll have to generate to do it, but we'll have to run that solar right now, but that solar will also take some of that load off that transformer.
Because the majority of our electricity is used between April and October, correct? I mean, that's when we peak out the majority of the time because
The
of.
peak is usually the first week that the Baker students come back
In August,
in August.
correct.
Yeah, because they fire up everything.
Yep,
Yeah.
so everybody's turning their ACs on and
Yeah.
you could see it.
Well, it's
And-
hottest month
Right.
of the year.
And we've worked a lot with Baker University and the school district during the summertime when they don't have students there to lower their usage, you know, in the months of, you know, during the summertime, June through August, because a lot of them used to run their air conditioners all the way through. And they'd have their workers and, you know, maintenance people in there doing maintenance, cleaning, stuff like that. They'd run the air conditioners and be running at 70 degrees, you know. And, okay, can you help us out here? And it also will help you out with your billing. So they've worked with us, we've worked with them, and we've got it down to August is our peak.
Okay.
So,
To go back to what you were asking, we have a policy at the plant, if we see 11 megawatts, we're going to start a unit. Because we're not gonna push the 13. Not when we have the equipment to keep that load off of there, so.
And so in August, our solar is obviously generating fairly well during August.
Depending on the day, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many kilowatts, because it's only a 1 megawatt system, how many kilowatts did it produce on average through August?
Well, it's funny, I actually had that. The math fire navigator, so let's get that, so.
Well, no big deal. I was just kind of curious.
Well, he's got the-
70% capacity on, I mean, I know we've had some,
I brought up some scenarios. One of them is the February weather event and what the solar did during that. And then I took the highest week, which was in the month of June. This was the peak week for the solar. And it just so happened it was the 7th through the 14th. And the total load for those 5 days was 618 megawatt hours. So during those 5 days, the solar produced 30. So, I mean, when you're talking about a product that's not around the clock, you know, obviously you guys have all seen the trajectory of that solar. It starts, you know, real low in the morning and peaks 12 to 1 and then starts heading off, you know, depending on the time of year. So when you're talking about, you know, the 1 megawatt of solar seems like a lot, but for those 5 days, it was a very small percentage of what your total load was. So,
and a lot of that is they've been having problems with the inverters and stuff like that since
Correct.
it's been installed. So they've been trying to work that situation out too. And that's Evergy's department. They're in charge of the maintenance and all that. So they're trying to work out the issues that they have. And a lot of it's the inverters. And they've replaced probably pretty much all of them.
we replaced 5 or 6, and we have 5 new wiring junction boxes sitting in the public works, and they were supposed to be out this week. We haven't seen them and get those replaced. What's happening is for whatever reason, either the conductor size wasn't what it's supposed to be, or they haven't actually said what the problem is, but the connections are melting within these boxes. So as soon as they melt, they trip offline, and they have to be replaced, either partially or completely. And so the company's been, replacing all of them, but during the time that it takes to get all this equipment here, the solar, those inverters have been down. Today we have 5 inverters down out of 16.
Which is just costing them money since we're on that
Exactly.
purchase agreement.
Correct.
So,
It's at their cost.
yeah.
But it's just simply that, and a lot of it's because the material is hard to find right now. And it is, trying to get it here is getting more difficult every day.
But eventually, if we have the intention of buying this in year 8, or any time afterwards, it will become our problem. So, and the inverters are warranted for 15 years, and supposedly the company will stand behind them for 15 years, providing they're still in business. But that doesn't mean that, you're still not gonna have the downtime. And once you own it, then it becomes your dime that you're losing.
Yep.
So, I will say that Evergy is working very hard to get this fixed, because it's in their best interest to do it.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
So, if you want to see one of the numbers, he's got them on his laptop. You can put them up on the screen. So,
No, I was just curious.
I can show you what the numbers are each day, as a typical, a low sunny day, a low production day can be very little. It could be, even a half of a megawatt for the whole day, when I think our peak day for the output was just over 8 megawatts, so, megawatt hours. So.
And it's 30 in August? You said that was what we got last August?
June.
Last June?
June.
That was for a 5-day.
Over 5 days.
5 days of good sunny production.
And that's with it malfunctioning?
I'm gonna guess that was one of the days that we were probably down to only one inverter off,
Okay.
because as much as it produced, I'm gonna say that, and without remembering that particular week,
Yeah.
my guess is we probably maybe had one inverter off at that time. So we were down 7% or whatever it would be.
So on this slide here, we're showing the sites. I gave you guys maps. I didn't know if you would have the ones from the council meeting I gave you, so I printed off some new ones. Site 1 is over by the high school, across to the west of Bullpup. High school, elementary school. Site 2 is the trailer park that is to the south of State Farm, that they're currently taking down all the trailers, and that piece of property is up for sale. And they currently want $168,000 for that. Site 3 is the trailer park over behind the motel, the old motel site. And that, and then site 4 is a piece of land that I have spoken about with Mr. Ralph Earl. So all 3 sites, the sites that were listed in the engineering study vary a little bit from these sites here we picked. Site 1 varied a touch because the land over across the road is actually in Evergy's territory. It was just annexed into the city, but it's Evergy's territory currently. There's been some conversations about leasing some land for a solar field over there and possibly putting a substation on site 1. So that's been a conversation at some utility committee meetings and some other meetings that y'all have had. Site 2 and site 3, site 3 was originally in here. Site 2, I seen that that land went up for sale when he started turning in trailer houses, so that I went and got prices for that and some information on that land. And then site 4 in the engineering study was actually out by the industrial park, but there's been just some discussions out there about that site going up for some real estate stuff, so that was kind of out. So I talked with Mr. Earl, and he gave us a second or a 4th site. And he is asking $20,000 an acre for 5 acres. So it'd be $100,000. It's kind of it's a rectangle piece in there. It is a very woolly area, to say the least. Me and Jeff went in there and we spent the rest of the weekend doctoring poison ivy. So it was heavily covered. And, but he had some stipulations on, I mean, he was willing to, he's got a 1 road access off of that property. He was going to also list on if we wanted that property, that's the site we chose, that he'd give us an easement from that road access back to that property, and also would give us an easement for any lines that go in. We have a few stipulations. Number 1, the city does not sell any of that 5 acres off for any building or anything like that. It's just strictly for the substation's use. And the other one was that he wanted some trees planted around it because he didn't want to see it from his house. So, which, you know, that's not, we were going to plant something around anyway, wherever we put it, so it's not seen by the public. Site 3 is currently a trailer park. It mounts up to the land that the city owns. It was the old motel. In buying that, if we chose to buy that, it was cheap, priced at $246,000. The appraised value was, I think, $118,000. Look at my own notes that I gave you.
That's the whole lot there that has, it looks like there's 4 trailers on it, looks like a part of a 5th.
Yeah,
How many lots is that?
there's 7 trailers.
Oh, it goes, it's a polygon.
It's an L, yeah. It's,
Yeah.
but if that was purchased, and that was just her asking price, I'm sure there could be some negotiations down there. Just need to discuss them with her.
Yeah, when
But
appraised
yeah.
value is county value.
Yeah, that's
Appraised
county value, yeah.
So,
Sorry. Yeah, county value. But if this was purchased by the city, that would also, you could take some of that land and add it to this motel land and maybe make that worth more to somebody else to purchase, or could do something a little bit easier with that. How it currently stands, there's 30-foot setbacks on the front and the back, and it's kind of hard to build there. So, there's the 4 sites. We did some, at the last meeting we were asked to come, I was asked to come up with some costs on distribution line and transmission line. I've been in contact with Evergy. They were supposed to give me some hard numbers on transmission line. They've been working on it, but currently everybody is on vacation in that department until January 3rd. So I'm not going to have those numbers till after that. I did go off the engineering study on the sites. The sites are fairly close to where he had them on the engineering study. Site 1, which is over by the high school, was $438,555.40. Site 2 and Site 3, since they're very close together, would be about the same price, was $368,633.49. And Site 4 would be $206 and $206,400. I'm not used to talking big numbers, guys. I don't have this much money in my checking account. So $206,497.84.
so on your number 3 and number 4, does number 3 not include the values that you've listed here in number 4?
Number 3 and number 4.
Yeah, so number 3, you have site 2 and 3 being 1.8. Does that not include
That is the distribution cost.
Just the distribution?
That's the distribution
Okay.
cost. The transmission cost is I'm sorry, I skipped over one. The distribution was gonna be $3 million to get it to total. And these are projected costs because it is very hard to get prices and keep prices right now. They're just fluctuating every day and they're not going down, they keep going up, by the way. It's about $3 million to get all the distribution to that site. Site 2 and 3 is roughly the same because they're basically sitting on 2nd Street. They're right next to each other. It would be $1.8 million roughly. And site 4 would be 2.3. So the transmission would be cheaper to get to site 4, but the distribution would be more. So it kind of offsets that. Now this is when the transmission is in this engineering study was all overhead, okay? The distribution, I figured it as underground. So that would be bored. There'll be done some trenching, but we'd have to hire a boring company unless we got a boring machine to do it all. Some of the issues we're gonna run into, with doing a lot of that, and that might run the cost up, is running into rock over on the west side of town, because there is a lot of rock over on that side of town.
So the distribution is boring, right?
That's the boring, the wire, and the equipment, no labor.
So how much is a boring machine? I mean, because if we're looking at a,
Did we talk about that at one point?
Yeah, we
did.
looked into buying a boring machine, and I did enter it in the budget, and we found one. It was a used boring machine, but it was in very good shape, and it was roughly $150,000. Since then, they're almost doubled. So you're talking 3 to.
Did you enter it in your 2020 budget?
I did. In the 2021 or 2022 budget, I did have $150,000 in there for it, because that was for a used one, and that's what the good used one, a good used boring machine was going for, the size we were looking for. Now they're quite a bit more, $300,000 to $400,000, and that's because of the rising costs.
But I mean, even with that, I mean, how much, so what's your return on investment on a $1.8 million distribution boring? How much of that is just for the boring?
Well,
So what do we
boring's
get?
$20 a foot, so I just I'm sorry I didn't bring all that separated out with me. But a lot of that, over half was boring.
So then we'd have a return on investment just with this one project on
Right.
buying a boring.
But then you're gonna run into rock, and that's when you're gonna have to buy heads and stuff like that, and that's if we run into rock. That was just a boring machine, that wasn't extra parts with it, like rock heads and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it seems like with as much overhead we have and wanting to go underground more,
Mhm.
that on this one project, especially getting it looped into this bonding.
And part of the plan was, with that was, I budgeted for the boring machine, $150,000 for the boring machine. I didn't expect that the prices were gonna go as crazy as they did, but we did. The last hire that we had, the apprentice that we hired, he knows how to run boring equipment. That's what his family has done forever, so that was one of the considerations when I did hire him. So we were thinking about that. But like I said, Evergy's numbers will be a little bit more detailed, because a lot of he has in here, he did not include some switches that were going to be needed for the transmission line, as I noticed later on. So Evergy, I've asked them to include those, a lot of the other equipment that was going to be needed, and kind of get a little bit more detailed cost. Having Evergy do it, the transmission line, versus us building our own transmission line, to their point, these are the reasons why. Evergy already has all the easements to build the transmission line here, which is a lot of the cost when you build a transmission line. Plus, most of their area, that their right of way is along the highway, and they already have line there. If we built our own transmission line, we'd be going right through the middle of town. And then do it, because that's where the easement we have, which means we're going to be disturbing people's properties, taking trees out, making people very, very unhappy. which I do not like to do. But, you know, sometimes it's necessary, but I thought, my thoughts and the engineer's thoughts was to have Evergy build the transmission line using their easements would cost us, and it also would cost us less money down there. So, most of your transmission line has to be overhead. So they don't, unless you get into some real big wire. Now, when we go into our substation site, we'll be using some bigger wire to pull in, which we could put some of that underground. But KCP and or Evergy's lines will more likely be overhead. So using their right of ways, their easements, makes more sense than us building our own and bringing it right through town. Because it would probably go right down 3rd Street or 1st Street. And I know a few people on that street that like 3rd Street very much. So we did look into a different transmission line, which would come from the north, from Midland area. It was a 115 volt line, 115,000 volt line, a 345,000 volt line. Which, are they more dependable than the 34.5 line? Yes. But they're going to cost a fortune to get. Because to do that, our system is 12470. We're going to have to step down those voltages, which means we're going to have to build us a couple substations to get that done. Plus, it's going to cost over $1 million for the line because you have to buy right-of-ways, easements, stuff like that. And it just did not seem feasible. We tried for what, 3 months to get Evergy to pay for this because we made the case it was more beneficial for them to build it because they could use that line to help get rid of the some 34.5 line and some smaller lines that are out there. It would help them with their longevity and their outage times and stuff like that. Frankly, their engineering department said it was not money feasible. So to them, if we wanted to do it, that was fine, but it's going to cost a fortune. And then there's also tapping into their lines. There's a fee for that. So it just did not make sense to do it that way. Do you guys have any questions at all?
Our line currently comes from the south.
Yes.
And east.
Yeah,
East.
we have one that comes from Gardner. It's called the West Gardner feed. We have one that comes from Ottawa.
Right. Which makes the substation where it's at now a good location for that feed.
Right. And let's see, we'll be coming off the West Gardner or the Ottawa feed for the other substations too. And the route would basically be coming from, and they both come they're going to come from Orange Street. So you'd be going out towards the lake line, out towards 1900 Road. They have a line that goes across already, a piece of property. There's a right of way there. That transmission line for us, for the substation that's on the east side of town would come through there and then down along the highway. The one on site 1 would come off of, also would be considered Orange Street. I think it's 150 Road or 200 Road in the county, and then it'd come straight up Orange Street and then hit over by the school.
The Ottawa feed isn't as reliable as the Gardner feed.
Correct. The Ottawa feed has a lot of fluctuation in the voltage. They're trying to fix it. They've made a lot of strides towards fixing it. They've put in some regular banks and stuff like that, and they've put in some new automated switches. It's never been as reliable as the Gardner feed. Anything that answer your question? Why a second substation is needed, and you guys have been hearing me preach this for a long time. A lot of it, redundancy. Making sure we got a backup for the substation we have to make it easier to work on, and this substation would be double the size of the one we have now, so it would last. It would supply power to the city for a very long time. If we keep the growth up that we've had in the last 10, 15 years. our job is to be proactive and to give you guys all the facts, you know, so you guys can make the decisions on the best you can, and then we follow up your decisions the best we can. So, you know, we like to be proactive, not reactive. And it's just a responsible thing to do, you know, to our customers. You know, our existing substation is located on the far south end of town, currently. All our growth seems to be going to the north side of town, to the north side of the highway. When you do that, it's to explain it in simple terms that, you know, it's like stretching a garden hose from the south end of town to the north end of town. And you turn the water on. Your pressure gets worse as the farther it gets, right? So the power quality is going to get worse the farther it gets away from the sub. So if we still keep building to the north and east and west, then our power quality is going to start to diminish. And then if we do not build a sub, and we'll have to start putting in pieces of equipment like regulators and capacitors, what we currently don't have in our system. And those cost quite a bit to purchase and to maintain. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and they're very dangerous pieces. The regulators are very dangerous pieces of equipment. Like they explained to me in line school, the regulator is pretty much a time bomb. If you bring it online or take it offline wrong, it's going to explode. Have I messed with them? Yes, we have. We used to have regulators in this town, but we currently do not, because we currently do not have voltage problem. But since we've annexed some more property into our city limits, we have potentially more houses going into the north. It's just, we need to be more, you know, proactive in making sure our power quality is acceptable and where it needs to be, and our reliability on that side of town, you know, to this town is where it needs to be. In, you know, the question 7, you know, to build more solar, is the second substation needed? Yes, it is. You have to build your system, your infrastructure to sustain without the solar or the generation if needed, because something can always happen, you know. And then any more, you know, if you have any more questions about the solar, you know, Jeff has a lot of answers and some spreadsheets and stuff that he can show you on a lot of that. Why we need a substation, why you don't want to replace the substation with solar. I mean, solar is great. It is we needed it in this town. I think it's, if I could afford it at my house, I'd put it at my house. But you know, you just can't rely on just that. You need to set the infrastructure if that is not available. You know, there's hurdles to all these sites. I mean, you're going to run into an issue with every one of them. It's just like, you know, when you buy a piece of land for yourself, you're going to run into an issue somewhere. You know, if you build it at the high school, you know, there's talk about leasing the land and stuff. My thoughts is, you know, this is my thoughts. I mean, you guys can make the final decisions here, but, you know, putting a substation that could last 30 to 50 years on a piece of land that you're leasing for 20 or 30 just kind of makes me nervous. And the legalities. And then there's also the rock that's out there. When we built that underground line out to that new elementary school, we dug 6 inches to a foot under the ground and hit solid rock. We jackhammered all of that out by hand and pulled it all out with backhoes and track hoes, all that rock. It got very expensive to build that underground line for that school because of that rock. And the prices I gave up in here is not including rock. Because boring companies do not like to give you a quote on how much it's going to cost to bore through rock, because it depends on what they break. We ran into that out at the Baker Stadium. They ran into a giant piece of rock and broke 3 or 4 things off their machine, which cost them roughly $80,000. But I did that job and specifically told them that, you know,
how to bid it, and then it only cost us $20,000 to have that board, but it cost Baker $20,000 because we passed that cost on to Baker. Excuse me. If you got anything to say, you can jump in anytime.
I'm just gonna add a couple things, something that we haven't talked about as a group, but something I really think is going to happen on some level is EVs, electric vehicles. We all know that they're coming to some degree, you know, whatever that degree is, you may have different opinions, but so everybody, my thought is everybody's going to get home from work and plug these things in at the same time. And if you go back and look at our peak every day, I highlight our peak every day, and our peak every day almost exclusively is either 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. So we're adding on, or we will be adding on, much higher loads at the times that we already have peak. So, you know, it would not take very many cars in this town before we overloaded that to 10 MV transformer. So a level 1 charger is a 40 amp. I think the level 2s we're looking at is 80 amp, and the level 3s were 400 amp services. So they're huge amounts of power that would be used at one time. And you know, whether we have a dozen of these cars or 100 of these cars show up in our town, it's going to play a factor on our system. That's something we need to be looking at.
And we've already, Jeff and myself have been looking into trying to get government funding for some of these projects for electric cars and stuff. So to place in town, different parts of town, which is, you know, we'll bring to that to you guys later time. But it's coming. I mean, you know, where they plan on producing nothing but electric vehicles, and some of these places are saying in 2035, you know, doing away with gas. I mean, like California, they're doing away with small engine gas, chainsaws, lawnmowers, and stuff like that. Just doing away with it. Electricity is going to be the thing. I mean, a lot of people are doing away with gas. So, anyways, Site 2, you know, that place, they're currently tearing down all the trailers that are there. But what he hasn't done is he hasn't capped a lot of the utilities, like the sewer, water, stuff like that. A lot of it, nobody knows where any of the water, sewer lines, or anything are in that area. It is a minefield of underground utilities there. That if we dug that up, we'd have to cap them. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that is a hurdle that we run into. And there's also been some developers showing interest in that property currently, which is a good sign. I mean, for commercial or whatever, it is a good site to build on. Site 3, there's trailers there. I mean, there's people living there. I know the lady that owns it, she's nervous about me talking about this because she, don't want all these tenants. But we have to discuss it because it is one of the sites. And yes, it costs more than the rest of them. It costs more than the rest of the sites. And if it is purchased, we're going to have to find a compassionate way of finding these people different places to live or help them out somehow. I mean, it's just the right thing to do. Site 4, as I said before, there's a lot of trees here, a lot of brush. It's just, and it's a lot further away from the distribution than the rest of the sites. Still a good site, it's just further away from the distribution. But those are, the questions that I thought would be asked. I was trying to have answers for all of them. If, like I said, the projected costs are going to go up because the market's just crazy. I keep getting emails from distributors saying prices are gonna increase 30% by next week. And it's hard to budget for things. And then it's also hard to get things like meter cans. I ordered meter cans in July. We still haven't got those meter cans yet. They're telling me we won't get them till March. And I had one on the shelf, and I went and begged and pleaded a company to sell me. It wasn't the type of meter can we used, but it would work. So we got 10 meter cans here. Things are just getting harder to find. Wire, conduit, and the harder to find, the more it drives the price up. Conduit has went through the roof. It's just went nuts. Wire has also. So those prices will continue to rise. Do I think they'll ever go down? I don't. They might plateau. I don't know if they'll ever go down. It's kind of like wood, and tin right now, metal. Wood is, starting to go up again. So is metal. I know you're building a garage. You're probably figuring that, getting that into that right now. So it just, that's just the way it is right now. Do I have a preferred site? My preferred site is between 2 or 3. Just because of the it's easy to get to the distribution. It's a lot cheaper for the distribution, and it's roughly the same. They're not much more than site 4 on the transmission. So those are my thoughts on that. I mean, plus it would make that property, the motel property, maybe a little bit more valuable if you take part of that property that you bought and add it to that motel property and make that a little bit more valuable in the long run, a little bit more buildable. But my main reason is because the distribution is so close and it's so easy to get to, it would make this project so much easier. But that's pretty much what I have tonight. If you have any other questions, if I don't have answers, I can get them to you as soon as possible. If you don't understand everything that's going on, that's fine. I mean, it takes a long time to understand the grid and everything else. You can stop by my office at any time, and I would be glad to go through everything and my ideas how to get distribution lines to these sites, and explain anything else I can possibly explain to you.
We've talked a lot about the distribution transmission lines and the cost of those and that cost of acquisition of property. What's the total cost of the project, roughly? With everything all inclusive in one?
Well, it's projected cost. If you say you split with one site particular, it's going to be around, with the substation included, probably $4 to $6 million. The way the costs are getting learned. I mean, they just jump so much.
And have we looked at, with Ben, on our bonding that's falling off with the power plant, the projected bond cost of this, what that correlates to? Have we looked at that yet? Okay.
That's assuming $4 million.
And like I said, these are projected costs. I mean, could it be cheaper than that? Yeah. Could it be more expensive? That's probably, but I'm trying to get them as roughly close as possible with using the numbers that I had. I can honestly say that this project would probably be, the total cost of it's going to be around, it would be closer to $5 million, to get it completed.
Which adds about $110,000 to that.
Right.
To that number, right? Roughly.
So 550's coming off in 2 years.
550's coming off, and then we're looking at adding 360 based on a $5 million
So we'd have a net loss in
net loss of
money going
$150,000.
out
Yeah,
from the city.
200,000 around.
You listed 4 locations here without maybe naming one. I don't know, maybe there's one. Is there one out there that's maybe got a couple loose ends with before we can make it a Site 5 option? Or we exhausted everything? These are the 4 options. I'm only saying that because all the growth is happening north of the highway, and you brought that point up earlier, and that's kind of my concern. Is that you get further east, you get further. Obviously, the 2 locations in town, 2 and 3, are nice, One, displaces affordable housing, and two, I don't know. Do you want a substation right when you enter town like that? To your left, can we put some
To
cypress trees up around it or something? I mean, what
the
do you?
left, which side?
That was
Number
two.
two.
Two is the one where all the pre-existing trailers are leaving.
Correct, yes.
3 is the one where people currently live.
Right.
So both those, I mean, I understand why you prefer them, but I don't know. That's
There
some
is-
crucial commercial
we do-
real estate as well.
Right, and you know, we discussed a lot of this in some of these meetings we've had, and my discussions with him, you know, we could cover a lot of the substation up with trees, fencing, stuff like that, where it's not visible from the highway. The site 2, or site 3 one, you know, we're tucking it more behind the current building that's there. And then we'll try to decorate the area where you do not see it from the road. You're right, though, on site 2, it's gonna be more difficult.
Right.
It just is, because it's been played. There's no water.
If you're worried about that, I mean, site 1 is really the best one. It's just maybe not the most feasible.
Right.
Because if Evergy owns the property to the north, I mean, we haven't even talked about the acquisition, you know, what the cost of acquisition of that is. So then that growth potentially is not even included in our infrastructure for our electrical services. So, you know,
Is there a hesitancy to steer too far north because of that feed that comes in off from the east?
Excuse me.
So the substation to the south off Newton, that's just kind of right there. I assume that comes down 1055.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it meets you right there.
It comes down Orange Street, which is County Road, what is it, 1, or something like that. It's Orange Street, Gardner Field comes down Orange Street, which comes off the highway outside of town to the east side of town, where the kind of triangles, you know?
Yeah.
Right there by where the phone company's got their switching station and stuff, and it's kind of fenced in right there. It comes in off on that gravel road and then comes down 6th Street into our substation.
Okay.
Ottawa just comes straight down 1055 or South 6 from Ladyberry.
But you wouldn't want to go too far north, right? Because then you'd have to tie in. You want to be relatively close to the highway.
I'd rather be close to the highway just because our distribution is
Okay, that's
right
it. Okay.
along the highway. Yeah.
I don't know if it was an infrastructure thing. Going too far north makes it more expensive because.
It
Further north.
Okay, that's kind of
Yeah.
More of the transmission.
both are
cost.
considerations.
it raises the cost of the transmission and also raises the cost of the distribution the further you go north.
Okay.
Had we been able to hook to the 345 that's north of town, then the further north we got, it would have probably been the better.
Right.
But that issue,
The cost was just
yeah,
crazy.
there would have been some definite advantages to that, but I don't think it's gonna happen. So I don't think there's any way that it would be feasible.
And like I said, we tried the engineering, working with Jeff and myself. We even had their some of their line people on our side. This would make it more helpful for us. That the engineering department just said it wasn't feasible. The money just wouldn't work out.
They were not interested at this time.
They said they could revisit it later on down the road, 10, 15 years down the road, but we're kind of wanting to get something going now. So but it was almost a perfect time opportunity at the point, you know, when we first started talking, because, you know, before when we were talking about building a substation 15 years ago, there was KP&L and KCP&L. You know, KCP&L, we were on 34.5. KP&L had the bigger transmission line over by Midland. And if we were on KCP&L, it's kind of like the boundaries. You know, we were on KCP&L, we were their customer. We couldn't talk to KP&L or Westar, whatever they called themselves at that time. And when Evergy combined, when we started talking about getting this engineering study together and all this stuff, and Evergy came about, you know, both those entities were like, oh, this is awesome. We could go talk to them about this bigger transmission line, and stuff, and it seemed like it was going real well for the first couple of months, and then they came back with us and said, it's just, we're not gonna pay for it. It just won't work for us. We could revisit it, 10, 15 years down the road, but right now it just won't work for us. Unless you wanna pay for it, then that adds a lot to our debt service side. I mean, that's just more than what we were willing to spend at this time.
So I think the intent tonight was just to, again, get the council up to speed of what the committee's been working on, and this is only half. I intend to have another work session on this because we still need to talk about the generation side, because if we're looking at this type of bond, one question is going to be, obviously, where the location of it is. It's going to be a big one. Two, while we're doing a bond for this and we see this dropping off, do we want to add generation on along with the substation so that it's all covered under one to address those needs as well? I just didn't want the council to take on all that information all at once and kind of digest this a little bit. I'm going to put it on the council agendas, probably starting second meeting in January, and then have a work session on the generation side in February, at the beginning of February, so we can bring kind of the two together. But I kind of wanted to start the conversation going. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because this is going to be a lot, and I think as we talk to the public and the public hears about it, get feedback a little bit from them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good.
We're forever away from a decision on anything.
Right.
I understand we're talking about it.
So,
But we don't get many opportunities to talk.
but we need to start talking about
Right.
it. Because
Yeah.
it's going to be one of the bigger decisions I think this council makes.
Yeah.
On here. So, and I don't think, I mean, in my mind, it's not a question of do we need it. It's a question of how does everything fit in. And while the funding for bonds is at such a low rate, obviously the problem is we're 4 years out, right? So we can't even project what the cost of the money is going to be at this point. And so how does that impact? If rates double, how does that impact our borrowing power in those projected numbers? Because those are projected off of today's interest rates. So, just a lot of information.
How far in advance can you do a bond for a project like this?
Well, you can do a construction bond. I mean, anytime, but you can't lock in your interest rate.
When it's done.
Yeah, when you're
So,
done.
I mean, a lot, like I said, a couple of those properties are being looked at, or one of them is being looked at real hard, just to let you know. And all of the landowners that I've talked to they're calling me once a week, wanting to know what's going on. Is there any kind of time limit I can give them at all that you guys would have?
One, we can't make that decision tonight because it's a work session.
Correct, I understand that.
I honestly wouldn't even know what you could tell them. I mean, I think we're easily 45, 60 days out from being able to really firmly say, yeah, move forward on this discussion. We got one council member out tonight. So
I understand that. It's a question. Like I said, there's a few of them that call me.
I think that's something that the council also needs to take into account on here is it something that is palatable for the council to enter into a contract without, there's so many questions on this because do we want to buy a site without for sure having the vote on that we're moving forward with this project? I think that's just some of the discussion there.
If you don't, you're taking a chance that it's gone when you do want it.
Correct. We are.
So has anybody talked to Jackie about bringing down her price?
I did. She said she's willing to negotiate. She said that was just her, she
Threw it out there.
she said that's the price I just threw out there. Okay. Wow. She goes, you have to have a place to start, which I understand.
Yeah, I think it would be really a bad situation if we lose both of our first choices.
I just, in talking with this, and she was very concerned that she might, with her, just discussing it, in an open meeting, about that. I told her there's not much I can do about it. I'm trying my best, but there's not much I can do about it. It's just what it is. But, losing residents there. She does have a couple of the customers that are interested in signing year-long contracts there, which could, if we decided to go with that, it could make it a little bit more difficult. Right now, she does a month-to-month basis. There's some people who are talking about, there's people out there looking at these properties. It's just the way it is. I mean, people are looking for a place to build. I don't believe Ralph wants to sell to anything right now. He don't want, he was very nice just to talk to us and suggest a piece of land. The first choice that I had, he just looked at me and just kind of laughed and said no. So, but it was up right across from, kind of tucked in the trees across from the senior housing, kind of tucked around the tree line there. And he's right, that's a more valuable piece of land than he said that we've got the price for now. So,
Well, and you can make two arguments too. I mean, it's real estate, so same argument that it could be gone. Same argument you could make that it could come down price on, everything's a gamble. I mean, when it comes to that stuff. So,
Glenn, do you know any of this money coming from DC? You're a little more familiar with the infrastructure bill and kind of what is any of that earmarked specifically for this that we could apply for, that we would be a candidate for?
No, because most of what is coming is geared toward renewable power, and what did not get through the last round, I think is still in limbo, is the tax credits we could have been able to get for, because right now, private power can get tax credits, we cannot, so that's a big difference. But that's really geared toward renewable power now, sort of basic infrastructure. So
Not transmitting renewable power.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not aware. I mean, they're gearing it towards something specific. So, but I haven't seen anything that would be eligible for substations or transmission or anything.
they were talking about some infrastructure costs to be covered. Rebuilding infrastructures and stuff like that, but that was just up in the air at that point.
Yeah, I don't think I made it through. I mean, the one that recently failed a couple of weeks ago did have the tax credits in there. But that didn't make it through the Senate, so.
KMEA and APPA, which is American Public Power Association, they're all following that closely, and there is some that say that could possibly be some money available for some projects that make your system more robust, but there's no guidelines right now. So I think everybody is watching that.
Don't count on it, but
Don't
keep
count
your
on it.
ears
Right.
Yeah,
perked.
well, yeah.
Yeah,
I know
nobody's holding their breath.
I'm reading up on it, like trying to
Yes.
read up on it once a week, trying to find some free money somewhere
Sure.
to do this. Because I know that if there's some free money, then I could get this substation through, So,
Well,
but
the infrastructure bill's a once in a lifetime thing. I mean,
yeah,
it's never happened
but
again
we're also
for
looking
60
into,
years.
we're also looking into the car charging stations and stuff like that, and trying to keep up on that.
Sure.
Because it's good.
Oh,
I wanna put it
it's
in.
coming. It's
Yeah.
better we be prepared.
And there's another thing that I've been following too, and I've been in discussion with Brandon and Lindsay from Evergy, is they are installing 2 battery. One at Wichita State and one at Pittsburgh State. And it's not done yet, but as soon as it is, I've requested that we do a tour of either one or both places and to just get an idea of what they're doing for the battery backup.
This is for storing solar.
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of it's still up in the air about how they're doing it, and we've been kind of waiting to see where it's going to go, how reliable it is, prices, and stuff like that.
The city of Minneapolis has actually entered into a contract to do a power storage program. So I may try to reach out to them too. and see
It's
if we
already
can get-
there, yeah.
Is it already in service?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was,
No, I think it's already, yeah, it's
Okay.
already there, yeah.
But
So,
we're trying to learn more
Interesting
about
stuff.
it
yeah.
before we
Every day.
do it here.
Sure. Minneapolis, of all the places.
Yeah.
I don't know why they
This
picked
is
that.
crazy.
That's with the Kansas Power Pool, I don't know why they placed it there. Yeah.
Retain as much sun as you can get.
That's-
There's not a lot there.
Yeah, I don't know what's nearby that they're serving. So,
So give us some thought. We'll be bringing it back in front of the council here shortly. And then we'll be talking about production here
February, in February,
beginning February.
beginning of February.
When we have a whole discussion. All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for the presentation.
If you do want the engineer Tom Woods to come and speak to you guys, like I said, the engineer that did this study, he is no longer with the company. He moved on to greener pastures in Florida, apparently. So,
The guy that presented last time?
Daniel.
Daniel.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
he's gone, he's been with them a long time.
Somebody
That's
else,
right, that's right.
Daniel, the guy.
somebody else left it.
Daniel, he moved to Florida, I guess. So they do have, Tom Lewis is, of course, one of the founding fathers there, and he has an engineer that was working with Daniel on this project that's up to speed. So if we do need him to come back at any time, they said they're more than welcome to come back and speak with you all. So if you need any other questions answered from them.
Cool.
Okay.